You ever feel like companies roll out the red carpet for new hires, while their most loyal, long-serving employees get, well, the short end of the stick? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty troubling corporate trend, where experience is penalized and loyalty gets shoved right out the door.
So listen to this. This quote, it came from a 59-year-old man, a total veteran at his company. It's a personal gut punch of a story, but it's really just the tip of the iceberg of a much larger, often hidden corporate strategy. This is the kind of thing that just makes you go, wow. And believe me, it's happening way more than any of us might think.
All right, so let's get into it. We're going to start by exploring the story that really blew this whole thing wide open for millions of people.
So this guy's story absolutely exploded on Reddit. Think about it. After more than 2 decades of dedicated service, he suddenly found himself being systematically, well, managed out. The company used some minor conflicts with a junior colleague as an excuse, claimed budget cuts, and then showed him the door, right as he was getting close to retirement. This isn't just one person's bad luck, people. It's a playbook.
And that brings us to the playbook itself, this senior squeeze play. It's a calculated move some companies are using to basically pressure their most experienced people right out of their jobs. Let's break down how it works.
You know, it's not something that happens overnight. It's slow and it's methodical. You can see how it unfolds over time, right here. First, say 20 years, an employee is a top performer, right? Then, boom, new management comes in, and suddenly the whole vibe changes. By year 22, tiny little performance issues are suddenly a huge deal, and they're used to build a case and, well, force a resignation.
So what's the main tool they use for this? Well, it often goes by the friendly-sounding name Voluntary Retirement Scheme, or VRS. On paper, it looks great, a golden handshake for folks over 40 with at least a decade at the company. But in reality, it can be more like a velvet-gloved fist, making the work environment so difficult that taking the voluntary package feels like the only option you have.
Okay, so you might be thinking, this sounds awful, but it must be pretty rare, right? Just a few bad apples? Well, the data tells a very, very different story. Check out this number. 52%. That's right. Over half of all workers over the age of 50 say they've had to deal with age-related microaggressions. And these aren't just harmless jokes, you know. They are the subtle digs, the comments that send a negative message about your age. And they're often the first shots fired in this squeeze play, designed to make experienced employees feel unwelcome and like they just don't belong anymore.
So, if all this senior talent is getting shown the door, who exactly is replacing them, and why are they getting such a warm welcome? You might assume companies are just hiring cheap, fresh-out-of-college kids to save a buck, but nope, that's not what the data shows at all.
And here's the twist. The new hires are often just as experienced as the people they're replacing. We're talking seasoned professionals, lured away from competitors with really attractive salaries and perks. So this isn't about youth versus experience. It's about a company completely undervaluing internal loyalty.
I mean, just look at this comparison. It's wild. On one hand, you've got the loyal veteran with over 15 years of service, whose salary is pretty much stagnated and who is getting close to expensive payouts, like a pension. On the other, the poached new hire, brought in at a salary that can be 20 to 30% higher. It makes absolutely no sense. Until, of course, you follow the money.
And yeah, that brings us right to the cold, hard math of it all. The absolutely brutal calculation that pits decades of loyalty against short-term financial targets. So here's the financial logic, laid out right here. First, companies target senior employees just a year or two before retirement. Doing this lets them avoid the huge costs of full pension and gratuity payouts. Then, even if they rehire for that role at a higher market rate, they've avoided those long-term legacy costs. It creates this perpetual revolving door of talent that looks great on the quarterly report.
This whole practice fundamentally breaks the social contract of the workplace. You know, that unspoken promise, the one that says if you dedicate your career to a company, your loyalty and service will be rewarded, not treated as a liability on a balance sheet.
And this isn't some niche problem. It's particularly widespread in major industries. As you can see here, it's especially common in information technology, where skills are always evolving. And it's also a big deal in banking, where traditional retirement ages and cost structures are under a ton of pressure.
So the big question is, what can you do about it? Because knowing all this is one thing, but being prepared, well, that's your best defense. So let's get into some actionable steps.
And this is your playbook, right here. 3 steps. First, and this is absolutely critical, document everything. Your achievements, your performance reviews, any of those microaggressions. That gives you leverage. Second,
If you see the writing on the wall, don't just resign, negotiate your exit package. And third, and this is a powerful idea, advocate for reverse mentoring, where junior employees learn from seniors. It's a fantastic way to reinforce your value to the organization in a very real way.
So we'll end with this question. In a corporate world where loyalty is increasingly seen as just another cost to be managed, how do we, and how do our companies, truly define the value of wisdom and experience? It's something for all of us to think